For 20 minutes, the executioners panicked. They fired point blank at the young girls, but the bullets bounced off. In the smoke-filled chaos of the basement, the soldiers stepped back in horror, convinced they were shooting at witches who refused to die. But it wasn't magic. It was a tragedy of cruel irony. The Romanov sisters had sewn 8 kilograms of diamonds into their corsets to fund a new life. Instead, those diamonds turned into makeshift armor that prolonged their agonizing death. This isn't the fairy tale of the princess who escaped. This is the forensic truth of a massacre that went horribly wrong. Anastasia Nikolaevna Romanov arrived into a world of gilded cages and blooming lilacs on June 18, 1901. To her father, Tsar Nicholas II, she was a disappointment, at least initially. He had prayed for a male heir to secure the Romanov dynasty, and instead, he was handed a 4th daughter. He took a long walk to clear his head before entering the nursery, but the moment he saw the blue-eyed, strawberry-blonde infant, his heart softened. Growing up in the Alexander Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, Anastasia was the imp of the family. While her sisters Olga, Tatiana, and Maria were the models of Victorian grace, Anastasia was a whirlwind of chaos. She tripped her tutors, climbed trees until she was stuck, and hid under tables to pinch the legs of unsuspecting guests. She wasn't a scholar. She was a performer. The world of the Romanov children was surprisingly austere. They slept on hard camp beds, took cold baths, and were expected to clean their own rooms. But this domestic simplicity was surrounded by the most opulent court in Europe. Anastasia's childhood was a blur of white lace dresses, Fabergé eggs, and summers spent on the imperial yacht, the Standard, where she played tag with sailors on decks polished to a mirror shine. Yet, a shadow loomed over this sun-drenched childhood. Her younger brother, Alexei, was born with hemophilia. The secret of his bleeding sickness tethered the family together in a web of anxiety. It was during this time that a Siberian mystic named Rasputin entered their lives. To the world, he was a mad monk. But to young Anastasia, he was Father Grigory, a man who offered her brother life and her family spiritual comfort. As Anastasia entered her teens, the world outside the palace gates began to fracture. In 1914, the Great War erupted, and the carefree days of the Romanovs vanished. The Alexander Palace was converted into a hospital. Anastasia was too young to be a Red Cross nurse like her older sisters, but she became the patron of her own ward. She spent her afternoons visiting wounded soldiers, playing phonograph records for them, and writing letters to their families. She used her wit to distract men from the horrors of the trenches. She was no longer just the imp. She was a source of light in a darkening Russia. However, the war brought out the worst in the Russian Empire. While Anastasia played cards with soldiers, her father was at the front, failing to lead, and her mother was being manipulated by Rasputin back at home. The people were starving, the bread lines were miles long, and the Romanov name, once sacred, was now dragged through the mud. By 1917, the tension snapped. The February Revolution forced Nicholas II to abdicate. Anastasia, suffering from a severe case of the measles at the time, woke up in a world where she was no longer a Grand Duchess of all the Russias. She was simply Anastasia Romanov, a prisoner of the state. The transition from royalty to captive was abrupt. The family was first confined to their home at Tsarskoye Selo. The guards, once respectful, now blew cigarette smoke in their faces and drew lewd sketches on the palace walls. Anastasia, ever the rebel, tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. She performed plays for her parents and practiced her French, but the air was thick with the scent of revolution. In August 1917, the provisional government moved them to Tobolsk, Siberia. The journey was long and humiliating, executed in a train disguised with Japanese Red Cross flags. In Tobolsk, the golden years were officially over. They lived in the governor's mansion, restricted by fences, and watched by men who grew more radical by the day. When the Bolsheviks seized power in October, the atmosphere shifted from protective custody to mortal danger. The family was moved one last time to Yekaterinburg, to a place chillingly named the House of Special Purpose. High wooden fences blocked the windows, and the glass was painted white so the Romanovs could not see out. Anastasia, now 17, was becoming a woman in a prison cell. She spent her days scrubbing floors and her nights listening to the guards sing revolutionary songs outside her door. The jovial girl who climbed trees was gone, replaced by a teenager who understood the gravity of her situation. She and her sisters sewed their remaining diamonds into their bodices, heavy belts of emeralds, pearls, and diamonds hidden under their clothes. This jewelry armor was their secret insurance, a way to fund a new life if they ever escaped. The commander of the house, Yakov Yurovsky, was a cold, calculated executioner. He spent weeks planning the logistics of their disappearance. On the night of July 16th, he received the order from Moscow. The Romanov line was to be extinguished, every single one of them. At midnight, he woke the family, telling them they were being moved for their own safety. Anastasia dressed quickly, donning the diamond-lined corset that felt like a lead weight against her ribs. They were led to the basement. Nicholas carried the frail Alexei. Alexandra sat in a chair. The four sisters stood behind them. Yurovsky pulled out a piece of paper, read the death sentence, and pulled his trigger. The execution was a chaotic bloodbath. The room filled with so much smoke that the executioners had to open the doors to breathe. When the dust settled, the soldiers were horrified to find the daughters still alive. The bullets had ricocheted off the hidden diamonds in their clothing, acting as a makeshift vest. Anastasia screamed as the men lunged with bayonets. It took 20 minutes for the basement to fall silent. The bodies were driven to a remote forest, doused in acid, and burned. For decades, the world didn't know the truth. This silence gave birth to the greatest mystery of the 20th century. In 1920, a woman was pulled from a canal in Berlin. She claimed to be Anastasia. This woman, later known as Anna Anderson, spent her life fighting to prove she was the Grand Duchess who had survived the basement. Her story inspired books, plays, and a famous animated movie. The world wanted to believe that the imp had escaped, that the tragedy had a silver lining. But science eventually caught up with the myth. In 1991, the remains of the Romanovs were unearthed in a shallow grave. Two bodies were missing, Alexei and one of the younger daughters. For a few years, the legend of Anastasia burned brighter than ever. However, in 2007, a second small grave was found nearby. DNA testing confirmed the heartbreaking truth. Every member of the family died that night in the basement. Anastasia Romanov did not escape to Paris or Berlin. She died with her family in the mud of the Urals. Today, Anastasia is a saint in the Russian Orthodox Church. She represents the lost innocence of an empire. Her legacy isn't the mystery of her survival, but the memory of a girl who, even when the world was falling apart, tried to make a wounded soldier smile. The diamonds couldn't save her life, but the story of the girl who might have lived ensured that the world would never forget her name. History called this a revolution. We exposed it as a massacre. We don't protect the powerful here. We vindicate the victims. If you want more uncensored history, hit subscribe. But now, I'm handing the verdict to you. Who else was betrayed by history? Was it Marie Antoinette? Mary, Queen of Scots? Or someone the world has forgotten? Drop your suggestion in the comments. The most tragic story becomes our next video.